The following is a conversation with Michael Box, an independent filmmaker and screenwriter who shares his unique journey through independent filmmaking and finding creative fulfillment. Welcome to the Mo Method, where we talk to creatives who have turned their passions into professions. Michael's journey is a testament to the power of storytelling, transforming personal experiences into compelling narratives, and embracing the collaborative spirit of filmmaking. In this episode, Michael shares his evolution from helping a friend co-write a screenplay to falling in love with the process and ultimately branching out to create projects of his own. We discuss the evolving landscape of independent filmmaking, as well as the potential for the independent creator on platforms such as YouTube and social media. We also delve into the parallels of AI in art and digital tools, the profound impact of personal experience on storytelling, and Michael's definition of success through the joys of creating and collaborating. Without further ado, here's Michael Box.
Hi, I'm Mike Box. I'm a writer, screenwriter, and producer filmmaker with Echo Eternal Productions.
Let's take it from the beginning.
Okay.
How'd you get into screenwriting, into producing, into filmmaking?
So years and years ago, one of my best friends, Patrick, was working on a screenplay called A Savior Come My Way. And it was about a guy who has a wife who's dying, and she they don't know what's wrong with her. They don't know what's the illness, and he is approached by a scientist who has an opportunity for him to travel into the future to get a cure for her illness from a from somebody who is in that he knows will be there to be able to give him. And it was a hugely ambitious story. And I had been a writer most of my life. In high school, I was editor of the yearbook in the newspaper, and I had written for the local city newspaper. I'd written for some magazines, and was going to go to school for journalism. And this was years later. He approached me and said, "Hey, I've got this screenplay that I'm working on, and I know that you're a writer." We were already really well acquainted. We had been in some bands together as musicians. He's a drummer. I'm a bass player and guitarist. And he said, "I'd really appreciate it if you'd look over this for me and tell me if I'm out of my mind for trying to do this, to go this." And I said, "Sure, let's look at it." And it was at that point it was like 180 pages, which in screenplay format, usually one page equals 1 minute of airtime on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So 180 pages is a 3-hour movie, give or take. And I said, well, first of all, we're going to have to pare this down because there's just way too much content. And I helped him to do a rewrite. We tied some loose ends together, some plot holes, and came together with about 120 page screenplay after that. And then he approached me and said, I think I want to film this myself as a director. And I said, yeah, let's do it. So he brought me on board as a producer, and then we hired some professional crew. We hired cinematographer, lighting, sound engineer. And what we didn't do is we didn't hire the actors. We got friends and friends of friends to volunteer. And
How'd that go?
Not as well, probably as well as you expect it would. But we were doing it on a shoestring budget. And Pat is nothing if not ambitious, and he chose to film it on 16 millimeter film instead of choosing to film it digitally, which creates its own economy. Every scene that you shoot is film that you cannot shoot again on. So it in terms of the filming economy, it basically is like you have to budget how much film you're going to use per day.
Right.
So it's not like if you shot digitally, you could go, oh, that was a bad take, delete, and we'll do it again. And so there were takes that we probably should have taken more time with and maybe done in a second or third take, but they were, quote, good enough.
Yeah.
So in the editing process, we realized that we probably should have found a way to pay actors, because although the performances that were given were as good as the actors could give, some of them were still a little flat. And we realized that what we ended up doing was paring it down from a feature length, 2 hour and 45, 2 hour movie. We pared it down to about a 20-minute, half-hour short that we still feel really good about. And we look back at that as kind of our film school. That's our student film project. We both didn't have any background in filmmaking at that point, so we learned everything about filmmaking from that process. How to manage a set, how to work with actors and crew, and all that stuff. So it was an ambitious but worthwhile experience, but it definitely helped shape our perspective of what to do with our next project. Yeah.
So that was kind of your first foray into filmmaking. Wow. So what were like some of your earliest memories of kind of being drawn to the idea of like writing and, I'd say not being creative because that's very broad, but
sure,
kind of being creative in this way of you said journalism and these different things that you were pursuing.
Yeah.
Were you doing that from as a kid? Like at what point did you feel first gravitated towards it?
Yeah, I was always fairly artistic. I would sketch stuff all the time when I was a kid. And then as I got older, writing was a good outlet for me. I wasn't musically inclined at that point. I didn't actually start playing guitar until I was in college. But if you've ever seen the movie Almost Famous, it's about a guy who he dreams of being a writer for a music magazine like Rolling Stone, and he wants to follow bands on the road and then write about the adventures and misadventures that they have. And when I saw that movie for the first time, I thought, oh my God, this was written about what I wanted. Like when I was a kid, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't have any musical talent, but my family were highly influential in my musical tastes. My dad was into classic rock, and my mom was like into more of the pop, top 40 stuff.
Yeah.
But there was always music playing, and I really loved connecting with different music. And I thought, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to use my writing for, is to follow bands, write about them, and write for something like Rolling Stone. So when I saw this movie, I was like, this is my story. How did they write this movie about exactly what I wanted to be?
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't gravitate towards playing music until I got to college. I started hanging with more artistic people and the musical crowd, and we started learning each other's bad mistakes and bad technique at that point. But yeah, artistic creation, artistic expression has always been a big part of who I am. And the filmmaking aspect just kind of like fell into that world. I fell into that world really easily because of my love for film and my love for storytelling. I really wanted to, to focus on, I originally had kind of anticipated being a novelist at some point. And when Pat approached me about his screenplay, I was actually working on a novel that I never ended up finishing because one, it was terrible, and two, the screenplay opportunity became something that I just kind of fell in love with.
Yeah. So after that first like initial working on a screenplay, did you just was that kind of your moment, your aha moment of like, oh, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life?
Yeah. I have really terrible ADHD to the point where like people joke about how I have like 1,000 hobbies and 1,000 unfinished projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
But and when we were talking before the recording, you used the word hyperfixation, and with people with ADHD, we tend to know about hyperfixation pretty easily.
Yeah.
And so I just dove in to screenwriting, and I watched everything I could write or everything I could watch about screenwriting. I learned everything I could learn about different writing techniques, formatting, writers that I really gravitated towards, people who wrote really great dialogue, like Aaron Sorkin or Quentin Tarantino or uh, Diablo Cody. I started just like, I don't know, consuming what they would do, and reading tons of screenplays. Just I've read so many screenplays, um, and that hyperfixation just on that one, it just never went away. You know,
Wow.
sometimes with hyperfixation, you like
Yeah.
fixate on
It's a
something for
phase.
a short period of time, and then you're like, okay, I'm bored now. Let me find something else.
Yeah.
It never went away. Like I thoroughly love everything about the writing process.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's kind of your journey been? So from after that initial experience
Mhm.
with your friend, where did you kind of go from there?
So after we finished A Savior Come My Way, we said, "Hey, we really like working together," and we had been friends for years at that point.
Hmm.
And we basically said, "Would you like to start like writing together? Like, would you be my writing partner?" um, and we developed a working relationship where we were pitching ideas to each other. We were developing story ideas. He carries around moleskin journals all the time, and he's just always filling stuff out. And I'm not that disciplined, but we have hundreds of ideas, and at a certain point, it would be like, okay, well, let's just start writing the first 15 pages and see where it goes.
Yeah.
And we wrote for a couple of film festival screenplay competitions. We finished a couple of screenplays that the only reason we wrote it was for that competition.
Hmm.
And we did okay. We never placed, but it was more of the experience of can we write something that's maybe not in our wheelhouse, like for example
Yeah.
a teenage comedy or a romantic comedy, or is that something that we're able to do? Can we do that? And we could. We found that we were able to do that. Um, our wheelhouse is more in the science fiction, dystopian drama. Although I do also gravitate towards crime drama. I like dark crime stories, um, and to some extent horror or thriller type stories, psychological.
Yeah.
Like I like that kind of stuff. Uh, and so yeah, it was a matter of like, is that something that we're able to do? And we realized that it was. And so uh, we started developing a couple of other ideas, some other stories, and one of them was the project that we're currently working on, called Speakeasy. And we originally pitched it as a television series for a TV pilot pitch contest.
Hmm.
Um, and then we realized that nobody wants to watch an independent television series because they don't know any of the people behind it, and we
Mm.
and we wouldn't be able to afford any actors that they would know.
Right. Right.
And so we realized that turning it into a film was probably the best option for us. And so we started developing that pre-COVID, and then we had some, life situations that took place that kind of put it on the back burner for a while, and
Yeah.
then we came back to it, and now we're fully invested in that.
Yeah. I'm curious. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Like, why do you think it is that people are more willing to watch independent films over independent TV?
Uh, Shorter commitment is one.
Mm.
You're willing to give an hour and a half of something,
Yeah.
to an independent film. But I also think that there isn't a there isn't really a market for independent television yet. I think there will be. Uh,
Yeah.
Canadian and British television tends to have a little bit more of an independent spirit. But here in the States, it's definitely still studio controlled, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because there was a show, there was a book that I really liked by Neil Gaiman called Neverwhere.
Yeah.
You read it? You familiar with
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. I love it.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
So I found one time that there was a TV show. I think it was like BBC. It was a British. The show was from like 2004. It was like kind of whatever, a little while ago. And I started watching, and it was kind of terrible.
Yeah.
Like it had a very independent feel to it. Like I didn't know any of the actors.
Right.
It felt very low budget.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. And whatever, I never really like paid it much mind, because I really loved the books, and I was watching the show. It's like, oh, let me see like if this is any good.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you say that. When you said that about the British TV, like that seems to be the case. That it seems like it was kind of, I don't know who put it together, but it was broadcast. I think it was the BBC. I think is like who was broadcast through. But no, but I think like you're saying, I think it's you'll see more independent TV, especially like we were talking about before we were recording. Like with YouTube and those kind of platforms where anybody could make something and can post it. Like you don't have to go through a channel.
Right. There was a short period in YouTube history. It was probably like 2007 to 2010 maybe, where people were trying to do webisodes.
Yeah.
Do you remember this?
Yeah,
so it was like an independent series of like television episodes that were only on YouTube, that were created independently, and people and there were a lot of them out, but for some reason or another that just kind of died off. And I think that
I wonder if it was just too early. Like I wonder if it was done now, I think it would have more success. You see, like you kind of saw like the reverse thing with Mr. Beast. He has his whole YouTube thing, and then he went and made a whole show on Amazon.
Right.
It's like the opposite.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But, I don't know. I think that maybe with technology being where it is now, that the production quality would be higher, and perhaps some professional actors might be interested in switching something up and doing something that's a little bit more challenging, or challenging to expectations. And
you don't even need big names, I don't think. As in, like, the big names definitely help kind of get the clicks.
Yeah.
But I think
it really comes down to investors. It's hard to do something like that without financiers. And financiers want to know that you're going to get the views. Right. And they assume that the only way you're going to get the views is if there's somebody in it that will draw people.
Right. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. But again, like, I think to that point, like, that is true, but if you can kind of get over that initial hurdle, in the end of the day, I think high quality content that's good is really what wins out.
Well, and with content monetization being an option, and you can sell ads as well. You can do sponsorships and ad support within your own content if you want. Yeah. So, there is an opportunity there, I think, if people want to try going that route again.
And I've seen that, like, that's being done a lot now. Like we were saying a little bit before, with like independent animation, you're seeing people kind of who are making their own animation and making YouTube channels all around that. Yeah. And monetizing off it, and and getting whatever it is, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of views. Yeah. And some of them are really, really good. Like with the tools, like with the free tools that are available now, you can make really high quality content. Yeah. For little to no budget. Yeah. And and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're pulling in a few $1,000s a month from whatever it is that you're making. Yeah. So it would be interesting to see, like, if we kind of see like independent, episodic, sort of TV essentially coming to like a YouTube platform. I think it'd be really cool.
I'm all for it. Whatever gets more people creating something. I try to encourage my kids. I'm like, take you all three of you have iPhones. Like there's a really great park near us. I'm like, go to the park, script out a story and film your own story, and I'll edit it for you, and we'll put together some stuff, and I'll start your own YouTube channel. And of course they're like, yeah, that sounds great. And then when it comes down to it, they're like, I just want
Right.
to sit here and watch
Play
YouTube.
Minecraft.
Well, yeah, watch YouTube videos and play
Yeah.
Roblox or
Right.
yeah, whatever. So yeah,
Yeah, no, for sure. But no, it's there's like I've seen a few people. I haven't seen that so much recently. It was more of a thing a few years ago when you'd have like the parents who would make like they would like let's say like the dad was in VFX.
yeah,
And so he would like record things like his kids like jumping on the couch or whatever, and like the floor is lava, but then
right.
he would add in like the lava VFX. It was like really cool,
Yeah.
like and I think it's really fun for if you do it well and you kind of can get your kids involved. It could be like really fun and educational for them to learn kind of how these things are done, and they really enjoy it, because who doesn't like watching TV? So
Yeah.
it's a big part of it.
I mean, I say that because there was a weekend or something a couple years ago where I did take my kids out into the woods and we did shoot like a horror trailer, and we had a good time doing it. And I know that they love that kind of stuff and they're creative, and so I just want to give them they have the tools. They have a GoPro, they have cameras, they have I never had any of that stuff.
Right.
So I'm just like use it,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and again, and there's so many free tools out there now that like you could.
They
you
know
really
how
put together,
and they know how to use CapCut better than I do. They know how to use TikTok better than I do. Like they can if they're ambitious enough, they can do it.
I've kind of played with the idea of like episodic content for like Instagram and TikTok, like these like short form where it's like you can make kind of standalone short stories that are whatever, because now I think the cap is like what 3 minutes. I think it's 3
minutes on Instagram. I don't know. I don't know about YouTube Shorts. I don't know what it is. I don't know.
I'm not sure all the time, but let's say let's take Instagram as an example. Like if you have 3 minutes, you can make like a little short film or a little short.
I've seen I've seen short films. I've been to several film festivals for short film festivals, and I've seen a short film that was 7 minutes long that they could have cut into 3 minutes and made it just as effective, and it's possible.
Yeah.
Telling a cohesive story in short form is definitely an art, but it's just like any other art. It requires you to flex that muscle a little bit, and then you get better at it.
There's this one guy who I follow on Instagram. He does a lot of stuff, like all his stuff, all the artwork it's all AI generated artwork, but he does this sort of like episodic content where it's these like it's about this whatever wizard who goes on these kind of like zany wacky adventures.
Yeah,
and they're really out there, and it's not super high quality in terms of, because again it's all AI generated, most of the kind of images and very minimal movement.
Right,
but you're not really there for the images necessarily as much as for the story. The story's really, at the end of the day, that's really what captivates you.
Absolutely.
And so like a lot of people kind of hate on AI for a number of reasons, but in a situation like that where
some of those reasons are justified.
No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
There's definitely kind of the pros and cons to the whole AI thing, and like that's kind of a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
But again, with the sort of ethics of it aside,
right?
Like if the fact that you have the ability as like an independent creator that I can go now and I could make an Instagram account where I just create these little 30-second videos, and again I'm just trying to tell my stories,
right?
And I just but I don't have to. I can kind of generate these images that are, again, everyone knows they're AI. They don't look like they were made by somebody, but that's not even the point at a certain degree.
Yeah, I have issues with AI as a writer. I worry about studios thinking that they can formulaically create a story without the human aspect, and I guarantee that it's going to happen at some point, or if it might have already started happening from some studios, but I think you're going to pretty quickly understand that those stories are not good.
Already you have that. Already you have so much garbage out there that's human generated.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So how much more so?
For me, AI is a tool like any other tool.
Yeah.
When Photoshop came around, people were like, "Oh, the world of graphic design is dead because now you can just manipulate images on your computer, and nobody has to learn how to use an enlarger or learn how to crop,
Yeah.
actual photos."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, no, like it was a tool. The people who didn't adapt got left behind.
Yeah.
And the people that lean too heavily, like if you look at a Photoshop image that is really badly edited,
Yeah.
or uses too many filters or too much, you look at it and go, you lean too heavily on this tool.
Yeah.
It shows the composition of the photograph is no longer important because you've added all of these different layers of manipulation to it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with AI. If you lean on it too heavily, it's going to show through. People are going to recognize that, and they're not going to value your work.
Yeah.
If you use it in a way that's ethical, that's responsible, that maybe maybe you use it to help generate ideas for how to promote your YouTube channel. Maybe you use it to help create or help organize your thoughts,
Right.
in a way that having an assistant might might help you with. I have no problem with that. Creating art with AI is a little bit iffy for me, but if it's used as placeholders for finished work,
Yeah.
I don't think I have a problem with that.
One guy I was talking to, he makes like art toys and a lot of like 3D prints. And so he's right now he's doing a whole series where he makes D&D characters, like miniatures, 3D prints. Like, so they're print in place. They're really cute. And so he's saying, like, one of the things he does is he'll take a D&D character from the monster manual, and then he'll use Midjourney to kind of help, like, okay, now give this to me in a very like stylized, super stylized, kind of look. And then he'll use that as kind of a reference, then go into 3D and sculpt it. Where you're taking this monster that's very complex and very, not realistic, but it's kind of going for more of a realistic vibe, and kind of cutifying it and making it very cartoony
and turning it into a 3D element.
Yeah. And so you're saying it's a tool, and so and I think that's kind of been the consensus of everyone I've spoken to who really understands it, is that it really is a tool. And the people who are really worried about it, I think, are the people who don't have the strong skill sets to be able to like rest on their laurels and be like, and know that they'll be okay, because in the end of the day they know what they're doing. As in you're a person who's kind of a low-level graphic artist who's making posters or billboards, like, okay, they're kind of in trouble. So either you level up or you find a new job, and like it's kind of harsh, but that's reality. You
have to learn how to use it and how to use it effectively. I think that one of the aspects that I was I just lost my train of thought.
Very good.
That's the ADHD. I was thinking about it and then it's gone.
It's happened to me before, trust me.
No, AI is here it was the idea that, like, if budget is the reason why you can't afford to hire a real graphic designer to create a character for concept art, for example. If that's going to keep you from producing the end result piece of art, go ahead and use AI to help you build some concept art. I would much rather you finish your project and put some kind of art out there, and then you have to defend using AI for the concept art. Than for you to say, I don't have the budget to hire a graphic artist, so I'm not going to do any of it.
Right.
Because in the end, if you don't have the money to hire a graphic artist, you're not going to hire them anyway.
Right. So you'll just kind of sit back and not do it, not put it out at all.
Right.
Right. So
So
I think
so
people
if you
have the issue like
if you get to a point where your project is finished and it's getting some traction and you have to defend the fact that you used AI to build some concept art,
yeah.
do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
No, and again, like it depends on what stage you're putting the AI art in. You know, if
Yeah.
you're doing it for concept to kind of use it to build your ideas out,
Right.
that's one thing. If you're kind of trying to put it as the final product, that's where it gets a little more dicey.
And I think that it's okay to, like, if you're putting a pitch together and you use some AI art that was created to look like storyboard, and at the end of the pitch you have like a little disclaimer that says, you know, art, you know, art for the storyboard concept was created through AI generative design or whatever. Like, I think that's okay. I think people are going to understand. Like I said,
I think people have issues with like when
don't pass it off as original.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Like
that's a big one.
Your own original art, because you didn't create that.
Right. That's a big one. And the other big one that people have issues with is when big studios that do have the budget to hire people say, "Oh, we'll cut corners and we'll just have it." And then like there's a controversy a couple of times, I think, with like Disney, where they put out like a Happy Holidays thing where it was a bunch of Disney characters sitting around the, you know, like it was Thanksgiving, so they were sitting around the Thanksgiving table, you know, whatever. Yeah. And a lot of people were saying it looked AI generated, and it's situations like that where people are like, you know, you're just doing this to kind of cut corners, and it's like that's where it also
there's no justifiable reason for a multi-billion-dollar corporation,
right? To not, say, oh, because it's cheaper, but it's like, okay, you know, but like if you're especially when it's if it was let's just say, for example, if you're a dental office, right, and so you want to make a poster to you know, to advertise, to use AI, that's one thing. But if you're a company that your whole company is based off of artists creating artwork, and then it's like, oh, but we're gonna kind of cut corners and try and do it this other way, that's where it starts to get a little, you know, icky. You're like, come on, like really, like that's where you're gonna cut corners, you know?
Right.
That's kind of where it gets dicey.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think overall, like you're saying, I think it really comes down to the fact that it really is just a tool in the tool belt, and again, it's a matter of how you use it, you know. And if you lean on it too heavily, or if you refuse to use it at all, you're doing yourself a disservice on either end, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in elementary school, we couldn't use calculators for anything math related.
Yeah.
And then as my kids were going through elementary school, it wasn't that they weren't using calculators; they were teaching them how to use calculators to do the math problems, because they realized that everybody uses some form of a calculator, whether it's an actual calculator or their phone, or but isn't it better to teach them how to find the answer in that way than it is to make them do it with, you know, long form without the tool?
Right.
You know, and so it's like the people that don't learn to do it with the tool end up having to do it the long, hard way.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is the people who have learned how to use the tool move through they move through it faster.
Yeah.
And so they look like they're more, it looks like they're more productive.
Yeah. No, the way I look at it with like AI is that like the whole, and I've been saying this already for years before the whole like art side of it, because I think once the art came into it, that's like, then it kind of like really all of a sudden like that's when everything kind of went ablaze. But I've been saying about AI for a long time that it's essentially adding more power to like your thinking abilities. So as an example, right, as in before there was the Industrial Revolution and we had kind of power tools, you know, like I can go with a shovel and try and dig a hole and spend, you know, a whole day from morning to evening digging a hole that's, you know, whatever, 3 feet deep or 6 feet deep and 3 feet wide, whatever. Or I could take 30 minutes with, you know, an excavator and have that thing dug out in no time. So
exactly,
I think it's kind of the same thing with thinking power, right? And so you could argue, okay, but now if the power goes out, the grid goes down, and now you can't access your power tools, then what? Okay, so there is an argument to be made on kind of the other side, but at the same time, now instead of me spending an entire day digging this hole, I just did it in 30 minutes, and now I have the rest of my day to start, you know, the next stages of building. Yeah, you know, and I think the same thing.
Yeah, or you could use it to dig your neighbor's, you know,
right?
Yeah, like you already have it. You might as well help somebody else. You know.
Yeah. So I think that's the perspective I try to have with the whole AI thing, is that, like, again, it's just kind of it's a tool that can be used, and if utilized properly, can just kind of help speed up the process.
And that properly piece is where teaching and training people how to use it, teaching them the ethics behind it, and like that's how you learn how to do it responsibly, is by guiding the younger generation in how they use it. And I think that once you can establish kind of like a code of conduct or a code of ethics with that, especially in the art world, it's like, does anybody not use digital audio workspace to record audio now? Does everybody still record on tape?
Right,
no,
right.
Everybody uses their computer. Does everybody still design stuff with pen and pencil on Sketchpad? No, they use Procreate on their iPads.
Well, you could be a purist, but then, like, how much are you leaving behind by not utilizing the tools?
Yeah.
That's kind of, you kind of look at it from that perspective, I think.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's a tool. Don't lean too heavily on it. Don't let it push the humanity out of it. That's one thing that separates us from other animals, is that no other animal has the ability to create something from our imagination.
Right.
And we have that ability. So
and I think AI doesn't have that ability.
Exactly.
It doesn't have the ability to be creative.
No.
That's the biggest misconception.
Yeah.
I've had this discussion a number of times with people, not in the art world, just in general, where people will say to me, like, "Oh yeah, I was talking to ChatGPT and I got it to say X, Y, and Z, and like whatever." And I said to it, like, you have to understand that just because you got it to agree with your sort of worldview doesn't necessarily mean that that's objectively correct. Right. Because
how many iterations of prompting did you have to do? And like, did you have to say, I need you to speak to me in a way that reflects, like.
Right. And also, like, on top of that, like, I once heard somebody say this, and it was great, because it's very true, is that they said AI is, like a puppy, where it just wants to make you happy. So it's going to ultimately do the things to get you to give your kind of stamp of approval and be like, "Oh, great job. That's what I wanted to hear."
Yeah.
And until you basically give it that reinforcement, it's going to keep trying over and over and over to get it. So it's not like it has an objective view of the world, because it doesn't have, well, that's the whole other thing. It doesn't have understanding, right? Like, it doesn't have the ability to understand what things are,
right.
And so it's an interesting, like, what's the word? Not moral, but like a philosophical sort of question of, like, because I think a lot of people, we want to assign these AIs with humanity and they have feeling and they have emotion.
Anthropomorphize them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they really, where they stand now, and in my opinion, I don't think they ever really will go to a point where they really have sentience or whatever, whatever it is that kind of makes us human, like, that's kind of the big thing that every sci-fi wants to, go to, like, oh, well, the AIs are going to kind of have feelings and make moral decisions about the world and take over, and it's like, I don't think so, like my saw doesn't decide, like my chainsaw doesn't decide, like, oh, it would be more efficient if I went and started chopping people. Like, it's that's really, again, back to the discussion before about it's just a kind of a power tool. It doesn't have a will that it wants to do.
Right, and I think that's the sci-fi writer in me is like the way that you get to that point is by figuring out how to give it a will, how to give it an internal drive. If it doesn't have an internal drive, all it has is information.
Right. That's what they are. They're information systems. That's really what they kind of boil down to. It's kind of a good segue. I'm really curious to ask you about something. You touched upon it before, and then also when we initially connected, and as you had mentioned that, like, you have some background with the, like, in religious studies, and I'm kind of curious to hear about that section of your career?
Yeah. So I was originally going to go to school for journalism. And at the time, I was having kind of a late teenage religious awakening.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up changing my focus completely and went to a private Christian college and was studying biblical studies to go into ministry. And I eventually did serve in ministry for about 10 years. I have a degree in organizational leadership and biblical studies. Um, and I'm also an atheist. I've been an atheist for about 13 years when I, first used that word to describe myself. But previous to that, I had, been a lifelong believer and was, a dedicated leader in the church. I, led ministry opportunities, service opportunities, worked with music ministry, youth ministry, um, small group ministries. I was heavily involved. I wasn't just an average Sunday
Yeah.
attender.
Yeah.
Um, but I've also always been a very analytical and research focused and scientifically minded individual. And at a certain point, it became very difficult for me to rectify some of the compartmentalization that I had to do in order
Hmm.
to maintain that part of my world and the religious piece that brought me comfort. Um, and I came to a lot of people have misconceptions about atheism, uh, and what uh, what I usually tell people is atheism isn't the statement that I don't believe that I don't believe there's a God. It's the rejection of the claim that there is a God.
Hmm.
So there is quite a difference, and I'm not proving anything. Somebody who says that there is a God, I just simply say I don't believe you.
Hmm.
Um, so what it came down to is that I don't I don't think that there is any evidence that is observable, verifiable, testable, or repeatable that would bring me to the conclusion that there is a deity or even the supernatural.
Hmm.
Uh, all evidence for me is to the contrary, and the only thing that would be required of me or of a situation to bring me back into that direction would be evidence that meets those criteria, something that could be observed, verified, tested, and repeated that would prove the existence of a deity or the supernatural, then I would consider that. But at this point in my life, I just don't see that as it's called faith because it's not knowledge.
Hmm.
You have
So
to, like, for somebody who has faith, they believe in those things
yeah.
because it's part of the framework that brings them to that to that worldview.
Right. So I'm curious, like,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of happened? Because you had this like religious awakening, you're saying in your
Mm-hmm.
late teens,
Mm-hmm.
so, and what kind of transpired from that point to the point where you decided, never mind, I don't see any proof.
Well, like I said, it became difficult to rectify the two versions of myself: the scientific, reasonably minded person, and the person who was hoping that religion in general uh, was true or presented a true claim. Uh, so for me, holding those two worldviews in the same person was clashing, at a certain point, and
Hmm.
uh, it got to the point where I believed less and less in the accuracy of the stories of the Bible, specifically miracles, when in our own reality. I don't think that anything that's been proven scientifically has been disproven with by saying no, it's spiritual, it's mystical, it's supernatural. It's like, well, we have a scientific explanation for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is no need for a spiritual, supernatural explanation. Um, so, those kind of things kind of pushed me in that direction. Interestingly, my wife's still a believer. We met at a Christian college.
Uh-huh.
So when I came to that realization, I remember sitting down with her, and in my head, I had gravitated from believer to agnostic, and from agnostic to an atheist, and I was willing to to be in that space. I was like, I need to tell her that this is where my head is, because I'm not the person that she married, and if that's something that she has a difficult time rectifying herself, then that might cause some problems.
Yeah.
Um, and we had a conversation. It was more like, well, I don't necessarily agree with you, but it's not my job to convince you otherwise either. Like if that's where you're at, uh, I'm not. There's not a whole lot I can do to just make you see the other, what you
Right.
already look. It's not that I'm a novice. I
Right.
have
Right.
I lived in that world for years. Um, I have a degree in that kind of understanding. Uh, so at a certain point, it was just kind of like, well, this is just going to be an issue that uh, we maintain as personal beliefs, and
Yeah.
and don't let it come between us. I mean, we've been married for 26 years, so it's
Wow.
it's one of those things where it's like,
Yeah.
if that's what's going to break us, then we have more issues, more
Yeah.
issues than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I'm curious, has any of your kind of like journey within kind of the religious world,
Hmm.
the whole package, has that kind of like affected your creativity in terms of how you approach, developing stories and coming up with ideas and
I So I've always kind of been a little bit of a punk kid, and I like in my mind, I still am the little skater punk kid that was anti-authoritative, and just kind of like, damn the man, like I'm still that kid. I'm 48 years
yeah.
old, but I'm still that kid in my head sometimes.
Yeah.
So I definitely write characters who are a little bit more anarchist and rebellious, and like I write those characters a little bit better. They're easier for me to write
Yeah.
because I think that's a little bit of who I am in general. Um, but as far as the creative process, I don't think that it really influenced me on that aspect. If anything, um, it might have made me want to, you know, uh, address larger worldview and skepticism a little bit. But I'm not heavy handed with it. So, it's one of those things where, I might inject a little bit of skepticism into a character's background, and, have them weigh what people say a little heavier so that they don't just take something at face value.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily something, like I said, it's not on the nose or heavy handed.
Right.
And
Right.
one of the things that I try to explain to people is I might be an atheist, but I'm not an anti-hope person either.
Mm.
If religion brings you hope, if that's something that is soothing and uh, brings peace to you, I'm not the guy that's going to be like trying to convince you to not
Right.
believe in that. Like,
Right.
like I love a good steak, medium rare, and it brings me a certain kind of peace. And if somebody came in and tried to tell me how a vegan lifestyle was really the way that I should be approaching
Right.
life, I don't think I'd be too crazy about hearing that.
Right.
And they would be doing themselves a disservice anyway, because I'm not the right audience.
Right.
Um, so, in much the same way, I'm not here to take anybody's hope away or anything like that. I'm not trying to deconvert anybody. My story is my story.
Right.
And I just came to the realization that uh, I don't see any evidence for the supernatural, and unless there is some evidence, I'm going to live a life that is guided by my own moral principles and ethics. And my basically my moral principle is don't do something that would be harmful to myself or others. Like,
Yeah.
I just try to live a life that doesn't hurt anybody and doesn't bring suffering or pain to another person. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and so like, why would I'm not here to take that away from somebody. You
Right.
know,
Right. No, for
yeah,
sure. I was curious about that.
yeah,
Yeah, I just saw that. I just saw that first, like initially when we first connected, and then
yeah.
you had mentioned, you kind of touched upon it before we were recording. So I was kind of
Right,
curious
right,
to hear your
right.
story about that.
And it makes for an interesting self journey
Yeah, I'm sure.
to go along that path. And I understand why religion is appealing to people. We all want to know that there's a bigger story, a bigger plan. We all want to think that there's a reason for all of the things that have happened in our lives, that a greater mystical element is controlling all of that, because it's much easier to digest that if we think that all of the hardships that are happening have a reason that's going to lead to something better.
Yeah.
And all of our ancestors have always used storytelling to kind of help understand the world that they live in, and create myths and legends and superstitions and religions that help them to understand those things. So from a storytelling perspective, I understand it very well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how much the motifs kind of play into fiction across the board. I mean, some of the greatest fiction kind of taps into the same principles and core stories that we've been telling for thousands of years.
Oh, yeah.
Like and you see it across the board. You see it in sci-fi, you see it in fantasy, you see it in drama, see it everywhere.
Depending on who you read, Joseph Campbell, for example, wrote the hero's journey, and analyzes the storytelling cycle of a story about a hero who's reluctant and untrained and undisciplined, and then he is called to action, and then he has to find a mentor that's an old grizzled person who helps to develop his skills. And if you look at Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, like, they all follow that kind of same story logic.
Yeah.
And we all relate to that for some reason. But there's also other writers who talk about, like, there's only so many different types of stories. There's there's man versus man. So there's an antagonist versus protagonist type story. There's man versus the world. So, like, usually that's like a natural disaster or community against one person. There's man versus self, where they're fighting within their inner, journey. They're fighting their demons, whatever it is. Or there's man versus the unknown, which is typically like a larger force that they just don't have any understanding of at this point. But for the most part, any antagonistic story is usually one of those four.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why those types of stories, do something for us. We like to be the center of our own stories. We're selfish, individualistic characters most of the time. So a story that is about us finding ourselves, us fighting against injustices, us fighting against evil, those are the stories that we develop.
Yeah. It was interesting that, like, I've noticed not just with stories, but with a lot of things, that there seems to be kind of a limited range that everything kind of falls within. One thing I've noticed, this is like a personal theory of mine, is that, like, I found there's kind of, like, I don't know what the number is, but there's a limited amount of personalities out there, and there's also a limited amount of, like, for lack of a better term, just to kind of simplify it, like, facial features out there. And I've noticed this weird tendency where a lot of times facial features and personalities will kind of match up. And so I love people. I love meeting new people. So I've met a lot of people in my short life. And I found repeatedly where I'll meet people who look similar to like another person I've met and have the same personality. And it's this weird, I don't know what that is, but it's this weird sort of thing where it's like where there's these certain like limits within the simulation, I guess, for lack of for lack of a better term, you know, where it's like it's in the same way that they're kind of limited amounts of stories. And this is something that I've really kind of I don't know if I'd say struggled with, but it's really kind of been like something that I find very challenging is the fact that there's a certain there's certain limitations. Everything has limitations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, especially as a creative, you know, I feel like for me personally, and I think a lot of people kind of feel this way, there's this burning desire to create something completely original and unique.
Yeah.
But yet it's impossible to create something completely original and unique because you're stuck within these confines of the limitations of, you know, what can be created.
Right. And we are sponges and we take in information from everywhere that you know, what all the things that we're influenced by. And you know, everything that comes into us gets filtered, and then we might think that it's an original thought, but it's actually inspired by something else that, you know, we didn't necessarily take into consideration. Do you know the musician Ray LaMontagne?
No.
I think he's from the New England area, but he had a quote that I found pretty interesting. He said that being a creative is like having this energy inside of me that will build up until the point where if I don't do something with it, it will kill me.
Mm-hmm.
And as a creative, I totally understand what that feeling is like. You get to the point where you're like, I have to do something with this. And so, you know, whether it's write it down so that I don't forget it, or, you know, one of the worst things to do is to have an idea right before you go to bed and for you to go, this idea is so good, I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to write it down because I'll definitely remember it in the morning. And then you wake up in the morning, you're like, God dang it, I lost it.
Yeah.
But having that internal energy of creating something is such a huge drive for so many of us in that spectrum of the world, creatives in general, that it becomes a motivating factor on its own. Just once we get that creative juice going, it's like, oh, we have to do something. We have to move.
Yeah.
I've told my wife, I told my writing partner, Pat, I said, I am the most fulfilled as a person when I am creating something, whether with my brain or with my hands.
Yeah.
As long as I'm creating something, that's when I feel the most fulfilled. That's when I'm the happiest. That's when I have the least amount of depression or anxiety. That's, you know, it's when I am not creating that I start to feel in a funk. It's when I start to feel that I'm not living my most fulfilled life. And so I make it a point to try to do something where I'm creating, like I said, with my brain or with my hands every day. Stephen King, like him or hate him, a prolific horror writer. You know, I think he's in his 70s now, and he's still putting out, you know, 2 or 3 books a year.
Yeah.
And he was interviewed, and they asked like, how can you be so prolific? And he said, I've trained myself to write 6 pages a day, every day, no matter what. If it's garbage and I get to it the next day and I look at it and it's garbage, that's fine. But training that muscle to write every day, 6 pages a day, no matter what, is the more important aspect.
Yeah.
And so he writes prolifically because he's trained himself to write prolifically.
Yeah.
You know, there are musicians who put out tons of material. Taylor Swift, for example, Billie Eilish and Phineas, for example, they put out so much material. And the reason is they don't stop writing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They write on the road. They write, you know, in their hotel room. They're, you know, and so a part of me is like, don't wait until creative energy hits you. Like,
right.
Find yourself an opportunity to be creative. Find yourself creating moments that are inspiring.
Yeah.
Go take trips, go do things, go sit in the hot tub. I don't care what it is, whatever it
Right.
is, find
Right.
something that can help you to be creative. I keep my phone nearby even when I go to the shower, because sometimes I don't know when the thought's going to hit me. And I'm like,
Right.
I need to do a voice memo right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So I'm curious, like, what do you think that is that where do you think that all comes from? What do you think the stem of that creativity is? Like, with the source of it?
I think that a part of it is, personality. I think that as a storyteller, as somebody who developed, I grew up in a Scotch Irish family. So I always joke that I'm Scotch on one side, Irish on the other. So that makes me a full-blooded alcoholic. Um, but the other is that, in general, the Celtic family or Celtic people are storytellers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an observer of other people. I love to go sit in a place that's crowded. If I can sit with my back to a wall and just watch people, I love coming up with ideas about what's going on in that person's story.
Yeah.
Um, an observer of other people. I like getting into the psychology of what other people are going through, things like that. So for me, I think I'm a natural storyteller, as part of who I am as a personality. But also, I lived through a lot of trauma as a kid, and I think that as a defense mechanism, it was better for me to come up with my own stories than to deal with what was going on in my own life.
Yeah.
I was able to retreat into a world of imagination instead of dealing with some of and I've dealt with them as an adult. Medication and therapy are helpful, but
Yeah.
but it's one of those things where I feel like, I created a trait for myself that helped me to dive into my own imagination. And I think that's why I like sci-fi, is because it's typically a world that it doesn't fully exist, but could exist. It's a
Mm.
world that is like our own, but is different than our own.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I tend to like those kind of stories. I like dystopian sci-fi. I like stories where, the system is broken, and that somebody is trying to either or correct the system, or defeat it altogether because they realize how broken it is.
Yeah.
And I think a part of that is growing up the way that I did.
Mm-hmm.
I had a mother who had cancer from the time that I was 12. And
Wow.
so she passed away right before I turned 19. She fought it for about 6 years. But
Wow.
but I think a big part of that about who I am is rooted in isolation and grief, prolonged grief. Because if you deal with somebody who's dying, who's actively dying for years, there's a prolonged grief that takes place. And retreating into your own imagination is an easier coping mechanism at 12, 13, 14 years old.
Right.
So yeah, as I was developing who I was as a person, the trauma of some of the things happening in my life definitely helped shape that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think?
Most writers are damaged in some way or another.
Yeah. So which do you think comes first? It's like a chicken or the egg situation.
Mhm.
Like, do you think they're creative and then trauma happens, and so the trauma translates into
Like
creativity,
it triggers it.
or do you think that the trauma is what kind of creates the creative?
It's probably a little, half dozen of one and 12 of the other. It's probably close, or six of the other. It's probably one of those things where some people are the kind of person that's creative right from the get-go.
Yeah.
And some people need something that triggers that and turns it
Yeah.
on like a switch. I was creative from the get go. I was a kid, I've always had ADHD. And so a punishment for me wasn't being sent to my room, because I would just go to my room and like play with Lego or action figures or, whatever, or draw, or, stare at the window and, create stories in my head. Like I was always creating.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think that the trauma is what created the creator for me. I think that for me, trauma was a way, or it was a catalyst for converting that creative energy into something that I could channel and have some control over.
Yeah.
For me, the life that I lived as a kid helped to form the storytelling and the imaginative aspect of that creativity.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I realized that other people have been through a lot of trauma too, and the stories that I have in my head can relate to them. Like people relate to the things that I put to paper. So.
Yeah. I'm always kind of blown away when I talk to people who are not creative, and to me it's I've always been like a kind of like hyper creative person.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, like when I talk to people who kind of like lack imagination and lack the ability to like, it's almost impossible for me to wrap my head around that. Like, how do you not have an imagination? How do you not like, how do you not experience this? It's very hard for me to understand.
Yeah, it is. And for one, I am not I'm not a money person. I'm not a details person. Don't show me a spreadsheet. I'll instantly not know what you're talking about. Science is very important to me as a skeptic specifically, but I'm very into science. But math, if it has to do with physics, or chemistry, all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know about this. So like, I think that we all have certain pieces that we gravitate towards, and we need people in this world who are not creatives, who rely on facts and figures and numbers and are, we need accountants and lawyers and doctors. I don't want a doctor who's all of a sudden like, you know what?
Daydreaming.
Let's get creative with this surgery. I want people who do things by the book, because there's certainly reasons to have those people involved in roles like that.
Right.
But you're probably not going to find those people in the art world.
Right, for sure. Anybody who's crazy enough to pursue a career in art, there's gotta be something driving you that's not just analytical. Because
right.
What was it like I've talked to like a number of artists, and they say like if you want to make money in the field, go become an accountant, go become a lawyer.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Or you can work in entertainment and be a manager. Be an accountant, be a manager, be a promoter, or be an executive producer where you're on the high end of the administrative chain. And those people are still working in entertainment. They just work on the business side of it.
Right. But at that point, you're not being actively creative in the same way.
Right.
That's the kind of the, who was saying this? Someone was saying that it's kind of, there's this irony where you start out because you want to be creative, as you start creating, and then you realize you need to bring on more people because you can't do it by yourself. Right. So next thing you know, you end up being in a managerial position where now all of a sudden all the things you want to be doing you can't be doing anymore because you're managing other people. Yeah, so it's kind of this like constant.
It is difficult right now as an independent filmmaker. I'm there's only 4 of us on our team. There's Patrick and I are the owners of Echo Eterna. And he's a director and screenwriter. I'm a screenwriter and producer. And then we have Via Lorraine, who is casting director, and she does some of our social media, and she does a lot of development. Like she helps us with the ideas, development, stuff like that. And then we have another guy named Taylor Smith, who is composer for sound design and different elements of like the music involved, and he's also a producer. And so like the four of us are Echo Eterna, but that means that we all have to wear multiple hats. We all have various roles that we have to play. And, as we get bigger, hopefully, at a certain point, Patrick and I will be more in the producer role. But that's okay as long as we bring on people that we trust and people who share a vision that we have and see the types of stories that we are creating and say, yeah, I want to be a part of that. I don't think that I think that the culture of what we're creating with Echo Eterna is different than a traditional business. So you can be, for lack of a better word, discriminating about the type of people you hire. Not the type of person they are, but the type of personality they are. Like you could say, we really need creatives here, or in this role as an administrator, we really need somebody who's an analytical, thinker. So, I don't ever want to be the type of producer who isn't involved in the actual project. I have to be hands-on. I'm a screenwriter first, a producer second. And if it ever gets to the point where I'm a producer and I'm not actually involved in the writing process, I know I won't be happy. With us, like I said, multiple hats: screenwriter, web development, social media stuff, the audio engineering, music, prop building. I do it all, and so does Pat, and so does Via, and so does Taylor. Like, we're all involved in so many different aspects. I've been an actor. I was an actor in our first project, A Savior Come My Way. I'm not a great actor, but I knew the character well enough to know what we wanted from that character. And it was a very difficult character for us to cast. And I said, well, I can do this. I had done some acting when I was younger, in high school and whatnot. So it wasn't foreign to me, but I just hadn't stretched that muscle. But, as a musician and, speaking from in ministry, speaking from the stage and things like that, I'm not, obviously I'm not opposed to, to talking and to being the center of attention. That doesn't bother me at all. So, I don't get stage fright or anything like that. So,
I'm curious, where did the name Echo Eterna come from?
The project that when we shot A Savior Come My Way, we realized that it was going to be punched down to a short film. We wanted to reserve A Savior Come My Way for the full-length project. If we ever revisited it, maybe to do a reshoot, like maybe we want to, with a higher budget, maybe we want to shoot this whole project again. So we took the short film, and that's the name. What Echo Eterna came from that. First of all, we the echo aspect kind of has a theme in the story of time travel and how what we do here echoes into the future, and then just the idea of it echoing eternally was we thought that the word eternal felt too philosophical. And so we just tried to Latinize it a little bit, and Eterna became the Latinization of it in a way.
Oh, very cool.
And we liked the way that the double E
Yeah.
kind of worked. We liked some of the symbology that we created for trademarking and things like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't roll off the tongue as well for some people. I've heard some people trip over it. But I've seen more ridiculous names for studios.
Right.
Our first project was written under the banner of Endless City Pictures, and it was named after a band that Pat was involved in. It was called the Endless City, and we kind of worked within that framework. And then because one of the other producers involved in that project was in the band with him, the Endless City. So we just kind of adopted that same piece. But when that producer moved and was no longer able to be a part of what we were working on, we realized that we needed to create a new LLC and develop a company brand to work under. We just gravitated towards the project that started it all, and yeah, so
Nice.
that's where that came from.
Nice.
Yeah.
You remind me. There's this Family Guy skit where it's like where they go to like watch a movie, and it's like the studios always have their like introduction where, and then there's a whole thing where it's like, oh, the movie's starting, and then it's like some guy in an alley, and it's like Guy in an Alley Productions, and then it's like, and then it's another thing, it's like, oh, this must be the movie starting, and then it's like keeps doing that for like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
You think of.
It's so interesting. Like I took my son and his girlfriend to see The Monkey recently, and
The Monkey.
Yeah, it's the
Oh, is that the what's his name?
The one about the like monkey that like claps and like.
Was there a horror movie?
Yeah. Okay. And the only reason I bring it up, the movie was fair to middling. It was kind of average in my opinion, but it had like 7 production companies, and I was like, when is the movie going to start? Like, so yeah, it reminds me.
Yeah. One last question, then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
This is a question I pose to all my guests, and that is, how do you define success?
Oh man. So like I said before, I feel the most fulfilled when I'm creating something, and whether other people enjoy that or not is kind of that's not up to me. So as long as I'm creating something that I feel good about, I feel like that's a success. Also, I'm a family man as well. I have a wife and 3 kids, and I want to be able to produce something that they're proud of and that they're happy with. And as long as that's the case, I also feel like I'm a success. I've never really been focused on monetary success. Occupationally, we do okay, my wife and I, but I'm not a compete with other people type of a guy. So I would much rather celebrate what my friends and family have accomplished in their lives instead of trying to compete with them.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that sits on the sideline and and I'm like, yes, good for you. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
Instead of, oh, that's not right that they make that much money and I only make this much money. Like, no, I'm not going to compare. You worked hard for what you have, I assume. So monetary success has never really been something that motivates me. And probably that's why I'm a starving artist. But no, as long as I'm creating something, I feel like I'm being successful. If I get to the point where I sacrifice my artistic endeavors for an unhappy existence doing something else, then I would not be happy with myself. I would feel like that was jeopardizing my success in a way. Now I could say that, for us, if we could get this film funded and it changes our lives, and it's, we are able to produce, 2 major productions a year, and, well, yeah, that would be pretty successful. I'd be pretty happy with that. But that's still about creating art. For me, that's still about the creation of my 2 favorite places in, like, when I'm working on a project, is here in the studio with Pat while we're writing. I love the writing process and developing characters, developing story. Like, that's one of my favorite things. But the other is being on set with actors and crew, and collaborating with them. And if I'm jeopardizing either of those 2 opportunities, then that's definitely not successful for me.
Yeah. Very well said. Well, where can everybody find you online, and social media, and all your website?
Yeah, our website's echoeterna.com, and it's just ECHOETERNA.com. You can also find us on Instagram at echoeterna. Where our YouTube channel has yet to fully launch, but you can find us at YouTube/@echoeterna. And then I also write reviews and filmmaking type things on my Instagram at Mike Writes Movies. So you can go to Instagram /Mike Writes Movies.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on. I know it took us some rescheduling to make it happen. Totally appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was really my pleasure.
Yeah, great.